consciously set about to recreate myths and the classic mythological motifs.
The Force is the core of Star Wars, and you have to be careful when you answer too many questions about it.
And concept design, I think, is so critical. I mean, it's something that perhaps is underappreciated because it sets the template, it sets the aspirational goal for what the movie should be.
I think I did it.
You did it.
I don't know how that happened, but it happened. So welcome everyone to this fancy episode 36 of The Forces Behind Star Wars. It's our first live session on YouTube and Facebook where we're not in a theater. And September is typically seen as the end of summer and the beginning of the school year. And so with that in mind, I want to begin this episode by taking attendance. So as I do roll call, when you hear your name called, announce yourself as present. So this guy is our show's resident Howard Chaykin. He's responsible for all of our artwork. He drew himself as tech, Dexter Weeks.
Present.
Excellent.
Hello there.
Hello there. Good to see you, Dex.
Likewise.
This guy is an 80s pop culture wizard, has the skills to nurse you back to health should you need it, and he's the newest member of the Rad Batch, drawn by Dex as Captain Rex. Let's hear it for Andrew.
The mighty Drew
Not
Ladies
present.
and gentlemen, we just had a technical difficulty. He just showed that he could disappear like Obi-Wan getting hit by a lightsaber.
That was definitely not intended, but it was quite comical to say the least.
You sent him out the airlock, Ken.
Yeah. So the world knows this guy as now I'm all twisted. Known as Dallas McQuaid from Steel Spirit, and
Right.
Here he's Rad Batch's own wrecker, Stephen Pershing.
I love it. I'm here. Let's go.
Awesome. And this guy has helped us out in so many ways. He's known on TikTok as the Hittin' Star Wars family, Zoe and Sappy's dad, Missy's husband, and on this show, he's the podcast master, Mike Hinton.
Well, thank you. I've never been called a podcast master, so that's I feel excited.
Well, it's better than Master of Disaster, that's for sure.
That's true.
And considering what we do on this show, who knows? You may be promoted tonight.
Okay, all right.
And so,
have I been on since the Georgies?
No, I don't think
I
you
don't
have.
think so. No.
Yeah, because you weren't on our live theater show.
No, I think I overslept.
And so if you haven't picked up my not so subtle references, this episode's going to have that whole school theme, that school vibe to it. Star Wars has been in all of our lives for a really long time, and even in a little opening, you heard George Lucas talking about how he wanted to recreate myth and tell stories and teach lessons, whether it's lessons to adults or lessons to kids in the audience. And so I wanted to spend some time talking with you and our fans, if anyone decides to get involved in the chat either on YouTube or Facebook, about some of the lessons that we've picked up from Star Wars throughout the years. And I see that he's got another person back in the studio. Who is that guy?
The mighty Drew.
I don't know what the heck's going on, but in case I drop out again, I might just stay out at that point. But please don't let me interrupt.
You can pop in and out like a Force ghost. It's totally okay.
There you go. I like that analogy.
Yeah.
Happens to the best of us.
That's right.
And so we were just kind of getting through the introduction and setting the stage for tonight, or getting the class situated for tonight's episode, all about lessons that we've learned from Star Wars. And so I'm curious which way you guys want to do this. You want to go through based on trilogy? Do you just want to go around the classroom and talk about lessons from the screen, and then do a couple rounds of lessons from behind the scenes, or
Ha-
do you think we best?
oh, we got a little technical difficulty. Let Ken's stream kick in. There we go. Ken, you froze for a second, but you're back.
Oh, that.
Hey, you want to do this thing chronologically? Starting from like episode 1?
Yeah, we could do that. That sounds like a great idea.
Cool.
And so with that in mind, what lessons did you grab from the screen from the Phantom Menace?
Wow. In the Phantom Menace, there's a great quote from Qui-Gon Jinn, which I teach nursing students now, and I actually try to use variations of this with my students. At one point in the movie, he says, always remember your focus determines your reality. And I think that is a great quote. I think that's a great life lesson for everybody to learn, especially like I have a lot of students that, who are returning to school as adults. They already have established families, children, full-time jobs, and stuff like that. And a lot of them despair about returning to nursing school. It's like, how am I going to do this? How am I going to get this done? And I can sympathize with them because I was in their place once before, but their focus will determine their reality. If you really, really want this and you focus on it, you will be able to achieve this goal. It is not an impossible goal. Nursing school sucks. It's so hard, but it's not something that is out of reach for anyone as long as you allow your focus to determine your reality.
I think it's awesome that not only did you find a lesson in the Phantom Menace, but you actually deliberately and specifically choose to teach that lesson to other folks.
Oh, I love that line. I love that line. It's that line is definitely a shining moment from that movie.
How about you, Dex?
For me, it's actually a little bit more outside of the film itself because I'm sure Persh will remember. I forgot how many years it was when the Phantom Menace first came out since the last Star Wars we saw on film. But for me, it was about like friendship, and it was how like all my old friends came together. That includes Anthony, Persh, and all my friends, and they all came up around where I live. I remember me and Persh camping out, get the tickets and meeting fans there, and it was like an excitement and this thrill of just anticipation of the new Star Wars film. It was really exciting. So for me, the lesson was like friendship, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
And would you say that there was a little bit of hype for the Phantom Menace, or would you say there was a lot of hype for the Phantom Menace?
Oh, it was astronomical, or at least around where I lived. I mean, I remember guys just driving around the parking lot blasting Duel of Fates, and everybody. I mean, me and Steve, we're old school, so I mean, when some of the younger guys found out that we saw the original Star Wars in '77, they were like bowing. Remember, they were all like bowing.
Stay in line, Dex. What did they say when we said we were OG?
Yeah, yeah, that's right. So it was great. It really was. It was a memorable moment. It really was. So.
How about you, Persh? Considering that Dex brought you into his story.
Yeah, well, talking about the hype. So the trailer. So the beginning of the the internet. We all know from starting in like '95. AOL, all that stuff, and dialing into internet. For those of you that don't know the sound of dong dong. So when you dial up to download the trailer, and it was the most downloaded trailer. I remember watching the episode trailer, probably to this day, more times than I had watched any other trailer. That original trailer, that got the hype. It was, the one thing that everyone, and back then it was Windows 98 for those of you on the PCs, right? And so you downloaded this thing and you watched it over and over again. So yeah, so it was a big thing, staying out for tickets, getting as many of all of us that, grew up together to the theater, and then sleeping out on the curb, to get the tickets, and then being in line and having people go, wow, you saw the original one in the theater? We're not worthy. And they're doing the bow. And that was what Dex was referring to. And that was hilarious. And then, And then of course, seeing the movie, one of the biggest lessons, that I learned is, which I never knew, if you're going to go to the racetrack, you got to wear boots. Because there's apparently like banta fada, like everywhere, and then you can step into it, and then don't get too close to the race car because you can get your tongue, in the racing vehicles, and there's it just doesn't look very safe, and I don't know if having kids racing cars is safe. Maybe that's another lesson. Maybe if the vehicles do 125 miles an hour, maybe not the kids. And I know that it's a slave kid, it's different, but still that brings up a whole other thing. It also showed me that slavery is bad. So anyway, there's a lot of lessons to be learned there. That's the lessons learned.
Well, considering that Mike's our resident mechanic, is it okay? Is it safe to lick a catalytic converter?
No, probably not. I wouldn't do that on most weekdays. So. If you want to get out of work or something,
What did you pick up from the Phantom Menace? Mike?
Well, the outside, similar to what Dex said, for me, the outside of it was when I first realized there were still Star Wars fans. I thought for the longest time I was one of the few that still liked Star Wars in that in between time, And then and it was also for me, it was the first movie I lucked out and saw the original 3 in. Well, 2 of them I saw in a theater and 1 of them I saw in a drive-in. But it was the first one I got to see with my wife, like and I liked it. I just thought the message of kindness, like when everyone else hated Jar Jar, I just thought the kindness of Qui-Gon, like not just putting a lightsaber through Jar Jar. Sometimes it just that character just kind of, because we all feel like a Jar Jar sometime in our life when we're with people. So that's kind of what stuck with me. That's how I look sometimes, like at my students and stuff like that, to make sure that they have someone to help them out. So, and my funny story is my wife wanted to do her hair like Princess Leia, and I said, we don't want to be those weird fans that dress up.
Now look at you.
That's amazing.
We don't want to be. But fast forward a few years, we will absolutely be.
Now I have a costume budget that's more like I won't pay $12 for a shirt for work, but what, $200 for a helmet? That sounds reasonable.
And for those of you that don't know, his daughter Zoe is a Mandalorian.
Yes,
and Anthony Gone, look, he just showed up. There he is.
We are blessed.
Late to class on his first day.
I had an excuse. My dog, actually, I don't have an excuse.
Well, do you have at least
you don't have a dog, do you?
Do you have a note for
No,
your
I don't
mom?
have a dog. Well, my wife won't let me get a dog. Yeah, I was on a highway. I was in Connecticut, and I thought I was going to make it a little earlier. And I thought I'm going to make it on time, and then they closed the highway to do some construction, and there went my timing.
Well, welcome.
What are we talking about? What's going on?
So, Anthony, I know that this podcast isn't about us; it's about everybody listening. But I want Mike to repeat that quote he just said about when his wife wanted to do her hair like Princess Leia to go to see Phantom Menace. Say it again for everyone to hear.
I told her I didn't want to be one of those weird fans that dresses up in Star Wars. So.
I'm going to put that on a T-shirt for you.
Yeah, that was. I mean,
how'd that work out for her?
Yeah. Well, it's that's my summer lesson too, though. Back to school. I miss making costumes, and we've only been back for 2 weeks.
So just to kind of catch you up, Anthony, what we've decided to do.
Shirt. Wait a minute. You look at your shirt. Did anybody see?
Of course, that's fantastic. Yeah.
Oh my God!
Wow. Staring me right in the face. I didn't even notice.
Wow, that's really nice.
Yeah, this is from JS Enterprises.
John
Scalise 2 was kind enough to put this together for me.
And for those of you listening, Ken is wearing a Star Wars The Force is Behind Star Wars shirt. Looks like there's merch.
Yeah.
It's fancy.
But are you wearing pants?
Oh, I'm not going to talk about that.
Oh, all right.
This is a Zoom call. I don't have to wear pants.
Just don't stand up.
Yeah. Well, I'm just like Cy Snoodles performing. Well, no, she was topless. Never mind. Uh, so you came in. We've decided to go chronologically through the films and talk about the things that we've learned, and we're still in the first movie, Phantom Menace, the Phantom Menace.
Oh, I saw that film.
So what lessons did you get from it?
The Phantom Menace. Let me think about that. I'm a little tired from driving, so
Yeah,
I'm gonna be that kid in school that just
you get a pass. You get one pass. That's the one. For me, so I grew up in this small town in upstate New York, and when the Phantom Menace came out, I was living in Washington D.C. And so it was a huge culture shock to me to be living in a big city with lots of people around. And so the hype for Phantom Menace for me felt even more powerful because there were just so many people there. I remember, there being a music video for Duel of the Fates, and Star Wars was on MTV and things like this. So it was a really it seemed much bigger than just commercials and advertisements in papers and magazines and stuff like that. So just the sheer intensity of it was really, really powerful for me. Kind of like Mike, the big lesson that I took away from the Phantom Menace was that even the most insignificant, wacky goofball character can have a lasting impact on the people around him and eventually the entire galaxy. And that's our buddy Jar Jar. And so, since the Phantom Menace, I've had a strong bond or affinity towards that character. I've almost, in some ways, have felt protective of that goofball. And so that's the Phantom Menace. It's just some of the lessons. When you look back at how that movie came into existence, or because all of our listeners know that we like to dip into the behind the scenes and the creators, whether you're talking about George or Phil Tippett or anything. Are there any lessons that you've picked up along the way, learning about how that movie came into existence that are as important or maybe even differently important than what you just saw on the screen?
I got
Because
nothing.
for me, one of the things that really stands out is this willingness of someone like George Lucas to continually be rebellious and to do things that many folks at the time thought wasn't going to work. Risking it all on this character like Jar Jar. And when I say risking it all, attempting to be the first person to put a computer generated character on screen in such an intense way. Even when you watch some of those behind the scenes stuff, I think he joked around and said that Jar Jar Binks was the key to it all. And I don't think it was just a key to the universe or key to the galaxy or even key to the trilogy, but just the technological advancements that were necessary to have Jar Jar come into existence.
Well, I think George Lucas's focus in Phantom Menace and the character of Jar Jar really showed how forward thinking he was, because while a lot of us were very unhappy with little kid Darth Vader and Jar Jar Binks, the fact of the matter is that George Lucas knew he wasn't making these movies for us, who are all now somewhere around the age of 50. He was making it for our kids, because if you talk to my children are now 15 and 16, and you ask them what their favorite Star Wars movies are, they're going to say the prequel trilogy. That was their Star Wars. And by doing that, he ensured that Star Wars will continue to have longevity after all the people who love the original trilogy are gone.
Yep.
Yeah, that was very risky because if you look at Disney's strategy, what they're doing now, a lot of people think that the strategy is in a way too safe because it's all older characters, it's all going back to the well. But
Yeah,
Lucas didn't do that. He just started over again in a sense and said, "Well, we're going to start over again, new locations, new look, right? New characters. Some of them are funny." He didn't really rely on the past to set the foundation for what he wanted to do, and I think what you're seeing now from Ahsoka is actually going back to that. Like, let's just try bold stuff, different stuff. Like, let's do crazy things. But he stuck true to himself, which I think is hard for a lot of people to do when they hit such a level of success that they think this is what got me here. I can't deviate from it. But he didn't seem to care at all.
And those special effects hold up.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, they do.
I mean,
Yeah, even in today's HDR world, that high definition kind of thing.
Well, I mean, as much as all the hatred for Jar Jar and all the damage it did, it's almost you almost have to. There was no hatred for the special effects part. You know what I mean? Like that's almost like a backhanded compliment in a way. You know.
Yeah.
Oh, you mean Jar Jar? The effects on Jar Jar don't look silly. Jar Jar silly, not
That's what I'm saying. Like the people that no one said I hate Jar Jar because he looks like a digital thing in a picture. You know that
trail, yeah.
That like the hatred for it. Like there was that one scene in Phantom Menace with the tanks that looked a little off. You know when they first put it out, but all the other special effects are so great. You know that I mean for just I say pick any film 5 years even after that, the special effects aren't as good as that.
It wasn't just that; it was also the attack droids, right? Because all of them are not really there either.
Right. That's what I'm saying. All those effects are just they're just so nice. And that's what we're seeing with all the new stuff. I mean, you know, as much as they tried to pit Andor against all the volume stuff, we're splitting hairs on the special effects of all the, you know,
digital hairs, of course, because they're not real hairs.
And also the other lesson learned from episode 1, the Duel of the Fates. So one thing we've learned from watching episode 1, if you get stabbed in the stomach with a lightsaber, you're dead. Like you're not coming back.
Right.
So Qui-Gon got stabbed in the stomach. So ever since then, anytime, well, other than Kylo, other than the girl and Obi-Wan,
you cut in half, or you might not come back.
Anyway. Oh, actually, no, we didn't learn anything from that because everyone else has lived from a lightsaber through the stomach. So
what about Darth Maul, who got split in half? I mean,
yeah, Darth Maul came back. But but now it's kind of like the trope: if you get your hand cut off, you live, obviously. But now, if you get stabbed in the stomach, you live, and that seems to be an ongoing thing now. Maybe that's taken over the cutting off of the hand in Star Wars.
But you know that goes to the throwback of the old swashbuckling movies or the old westerns. Like the hero could get shot 30 times, but if he snuck up behind someone and chopped them in the neck or just shot them once, they were dead.
Right.
You know, so
in those movies, a shoulder wound means you're fine.
Yeah.
Do you remember in those movies where they give you like the karate chop and then like hit you back here and you just like
That's every 80s movie.
Yeah, pretty much.
Indigo Montoya, Princess Bride. Who saw him coming back to kill the six-fingered man? He got messed up.
Right.
There you go.
Or did anyone ever watch Kung Fu Theater on Saturdays?
Oh my God.
Kung Fu Theater, the hero would get like rocket shot through and he would live.
Yeah.
So let's move on to that second movie then, Attack of the Clones. Speaking of kung fu chopping and attacking, what are some of the lessons you got from that one?
Don't despair. I'm one of those guys who, after I saw the Phantom Menace, I was sitting there in the theater wanting so much to like it. And it's kind of like when there's a movie that somebody thinks is really great and they build it up and they build it up and they build it up for you. And then you go to see it and you're thinking, it's not as great as all that. That's kind of how I felt in Phantom Menace. Like I'm sitting there almost trying to force myself to be into the movie. So when Attack of the Clones came out, right from the first scene, them jumping on the bed to cut the snake in half and all that, I was like, okay, we're gonna be okay. Don't despair. They got it figured out.
How about you, Dex? What'd you grab from it?
Well, like Mike said earlier, I took my wife to see Attack of the Clones because honestly, for me, I guess the lesson I took was how much Anakin loved Padme, you know. So for me, it was almost like a love story, and I think that's why my wife kind of dug it a little bit too. So yeah, I think love was strong in ATOC. So.
How about you, Anthony?
Yeah,
you're on mute or something. Your mic went out.
Sorry about that. What lessons have I learned from Attack of the Clones?
Yeah.
Just to restate the problem to buy me some time here, right? What lessons have I learned from Attack of the Clones? Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen I've ever watched the movie, thinking about what lessons I could learn from it. Attack of the Clones. I've learned that patience is a virtue because Anakin's always doing stuff to get himself in trouble, right? He's always like just jumping the gun. It's actually a lesson that I can't really say why, but in business, like recently, sometimes waiting is the best thing to do than just attacking and jumping into a situation. And looking back and kind of having some restraint is a lesson I think we could learn from Anakin, always continually doing that and always it never really working out in his favor.
Well, so have you jumped from a moving car lately or something?
No, I just meant like his attitude about
Oh,
always
okay.
getting into trouble. He just kind of jumps into things without really considering the consequences, right?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
How about you, Mike?
I think the lesson it was more about how dogmatic the Jedi were. Like they give you hints of that in Phantom Menace, and so it made me like it just made me rethink like people that just live by dogma without having like the true essence of what it was. And so that was my deep philosophical thing. My Zoe was just born when it came out, so she was too young to see it. She had seen the other ones, but she was too young, to take to the movie theater. But when I saw that, I was like, man, she's gonna love this just because of all the visuals, the clones, and Yoda jumping around. So I knew like, oh, I got to get her to see more Star Wars. She was just barely one, I think, when it came out, or something like that, or two, almost two. I don't know, but
Nice. How about you, Persh?
Oh man, I went up to see this movie at the Ziegfeld Theater in New York City. It was the only laser projection on the East Coast. Got to see it with 1,000 people, and I learned one thing. Sometimes a love story can provoke laughter. So in that theater, I was there with the girl, and during the love scene, after I think there was 25 outfit changes by Padme. I think it was like around outfit change 18 when everyone was laughing in the theater, and my girlfriend at the time asked me, why are they laughing? And I said, because it's just so beautiful. So, but it was but the lesson learned, like talking about seeing it with a bunch of Star Wars fans, even though some of that dialogue was tough and, it's taken some heat for that stuff. The ability or the chance that I had to sit with all those Star Wars fans, I learned one thing. Everyone else is they're the dorks. They're the dorks. If you're not in this room, if you're not one of the nerds, these are the cool people. And I tell everyone that has daughters and kids, especially daughters, I'm like, you better find yourself somebody who's nerdy and like nerdy things, because they'll treat you right. And I still stick by that comment, because in that room, everyone was great. It's like I made 50, 60 friends just by sitting in this big row. So yeah, that's one of the things that it was, like you said, that there was more, like you referred to. It's great to see these movies and see that you're not Star Wars fans still exist. Man, there was 1,000 people, packed house. And that was, amazing. Even though I wasn't there with Dex and Anthony like I was for episode 1, that was just one of the lessons. I was like, all right, and which is great, because for a long time I didn't think we'd ever get a Star Wars movie. So then, my passion and everything, it just came back up. And there's certain things in the movie that we all, wish were a little bit different, but when it comes down to it, it's the thing I learned is that I'm okay. If you want to call me a nerd, a geek, I'm good. Let's go.
I got 999 people that got my back.
Let's go. We might be able to not fight you guys, but you know what? We'll hug you. We'll give you a big Chewbacca bear hug. Let's go.
For me, it was so. At that point, there was, let's see, the original trilogy, the the two Ewok movies, the Phantom Menace, and then Attack of the Clones, and it was like I thought I had seen a lot of Star Wars stuff, and that movie surprised me with, like you said, the love story, the kiss that shouldn't have been, or that will haunt me, or whatever the line was. So so for me, the biggest takeaway from that movie is you're going to continue to be surprised by what Star Wars will bring to you. You know, you thought you knew it all, you thought you saw it all, but here's a couple zingers that you didn't necessarily see coming.
Well, I didn't see that outfit that Padme was wearing, that black leather outfit. I never saw that coming.
Yeah. I like that one.
Uh-huh.
I think the lesson here, though, is really like to build a relationship on truth and not lies, because that whole relationship was doomed from the beginning. Like, what were they thinking? What were they thinking? It was never going to work. It just doesn't make any sense how they built this relationship. Like, we're going to keep the secret, even though we're going to be at my beach house and like 55 people are going to see you, and you're going to be back, and we're going to keep winking at each other. Like, come on, guys. And like, you're a Jedi, you can't do that stuff. Like, why even be a Jedi? Like, what are you even trying to do? You don't really need them to wear the robes and have a lightsaber. You can keep that stuff and not be in the order. Just get into a relationship. Who cares?
He was raised by celibate monks, and you mean he didn't know what he was doing with women?
Well, he kind of seemed like he did, actually. That's the one thing he did know.
So how about John's favorite movie, Revenge of the Sith? Who wants to kick us off with a lesson or two from that one?
Mike,
Well,
you're on.
There's another great quote in Revenge of the Sith. The quote itself isn't really something that you would say in real life, but it's adaptable to real life. In episode 3, Obi-Wan says, "Only a Sith deals in absolutes." And I think that is a great lesson to extract in our lives also. Like, if you ever encounter somebody who says this is the way something's got to be and there's no other way and this and that, you know that this may not be a person you really want to spend a lot of time talking to. Nothing in the world needs to be as absolute as all of that. And that's something that I always remembered from that movie, is that, yeah, anybody who deals in absolute, something's not right there. Something's off. Something we need to pay attention to other people around this individual.
If you're not with me, you're against me.
Exactly.
So, did you raise your hand, Steve?
I did. Listen, and right when I say this, I think it's going to be universal. Everyone agrees. The greatest lesson learned from watching Revenge of the Sith is the high ground.
Yeah.
It is the high ground. That has been, anytime somebody has the high ground, and it's true in military tactics, and it's absolutely true. So even though Anakin, again, I think toe to toe, but strategically, Anakin lost because of the high ground. And Obi-Wan even told him, "I have the high ground, don't do it." But for the rest of my life and everyone else here and everyone listening and everyone watching, when somebody got the high ground, they're going to win.
Yeah, don't
Strangely enough, that's another absolute. Like Obi-Wan said, "Anakin, I have the high ground.
Yeah.
There's no possible way for you to win." At that moment, I kind of wanted to get Obi-Wan to get a little bit hurt at that moment. Quite honestly, come on.
Well,
Well, what's great about that line and everything is, I went to a minor league baseball game, and they had, like, you ever see those oversized lifeguard stands or whatever, and a bunch of kids were running around and playing. And actually, it was actually a Disney kid. I forgot his name. He actually sang the national anthem and a couple of songs, and he was like wrestling around all these guys. And I was like, look at this Disney kid running around. One of the greatest lines was he got on top of that lifeguard stand and he did the line like, "Anakin, I have the high ground," and I was like, that kid is awesome, man. I couldn't believe how great that was. So, but yeah, I think the lesson I got from out of this was, I think Ken was bringing it up about how you didn't know what to expect next. And like, we kind of knew the story of Vader or how Anakin turned into Darth Vader, obviously, but we didn't know how or got to see what happened. And I think this movie really, I was really excited and to see what made him change to the dark side. And I think they nailed it. You know, I mean, you were saying this is John's favorite movie. I think before Rogue One, this was my favorite movie as well. So that's what I took out of it.
How about you, Mike?
Yeah, I was in the same as Dex in the sense that it brought, like, for the people that watched the originals, and we heard the rumors of the Clone Wars, and then, you know, there was always those rumors of what happened to Vader and stuff, and it seemed like Lucas had a really good plan on how Vader turned, and it left it open to so much other stuff. Like, I could watch the scenes of when the clones turn on the Jedi. Like, that's just such good. Like, they could make 100 clips of the different ones, and I would watch them over and over again. You know, and that's actually the movie. I think that's the movie that, when the Clone Wars came out, I knew Zoe would be able to handle, you know, because she was a little older then. So,
yeah, it was kind of brutal. Some of the, like,
yeah,
there's a lot of limbs flying. There's, like, you know, the little kids, Order 66, you know,
and with me,
pretty violent.
With my parenting, we were talking about my daughter was involved in a fender bender Monday, and Zoe cries at every Star Wars. You know, she was crying the other night. She'll cry on TV, anything Star Wars. She'll be crying. If you see our Star Wars story, she's crying in that.
She's amazing.
She was in a car accident. She was calm as can be. Like, get me, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I think that movie, because my wife and I had discussions when they were little about what they could watch, you know, what every parent has. And what I realized is Star Wars lets people set aside test emotions, you know, so you can mourn a character. And if someone close to you passes, sometimes the one thing we all want to do is just get over it. You know, when, like, I remember when my grandfather passed, I just wanted to get to the stage where people weren't asking me every time they saw me if I was okay. So I had to button that up. But then when I want to feel those emotions, I can watch a Star Wars movie, or I can think about a Star Wars book, and I can let those emotions flow for a character, and it kind of gives you that little bit of a release without having to deal with sometimes the stuff you need to. And I think my kids have a pretty good balance of that kind of stuff too.
Yeah, it's great.
It's funny that you bring up this idea of test driving emotions, and I know that this group may not want to talk about the Ewok movies, but I'll bring them up here because when George put together the Ewok movies, especially that very first one, he wanted it to include death because he wanted his children to be able to see that stuff on screen, and also to do exactly what Mike was just talking about, this idea of practicing emotions with these characters on a screen that we love, so that when that happens in real life, we can understand it, we can process it in a way that's productive or healthy, for lack of better words. So I definitely saw it from that. And for me, for the Revenge of the Sith, the biggest lesson was I want more. And I know it sounds greedy, I know it sounds selfish, but I just was so enamored and excited by what we had been seeing with the two movies before, and then this one. I just wanted more and more and more of these stories, of these characters, of this galaxy. And even though there was, space between the movies, and we did get the cartoons, I was just glad that it has become what it is. And I think the prequel trilogy helped create the environment for that to happen.
And on that, Ken, that's the first time watching the Clone Wars. Like, I remember watching Clone Wars. They introduced a clone, and then at the end of the episode, he died. And I remember watching it going, did they just kill that? And everyone's standing around, and they do the military. And when you grow up watching G.I. Joe, where everything blows up, you see 10 parachutes, even though 2 guys were in it, and you watch the A-Team, 5,000 shots fired. The only people that ever got shot once was the A-Team.
Right.
So, And then you're watching this animated show, and I thought that was pretty amazing. There was a clone that died, and I was like, wow, and it hit me. And I'm watching the animated, I'm like, damn, like, when you're an '80s kid and you grow up in late '70s and '80s, nobody dies on TV, nobody dies. Now all of a sudden this happens. So anyway, that was like the start of it. Maybe the Ewoks started the whole like where you kill something, I mean, we all know when we watch Return of the Jedi, when the Ewoks go down, he shakes them. We're all like, no, we don't even know his name, but it's the saddest thing in the world.
Absolutely. How about you, Anthony?
There's a lot of lessons to take from this film. I mean, there's so many. I think I'll give you two of them. Okay. One of them is don't believe everything somebody says, right? Like Anakin is so naive. He just believes anything the Emperor says. He just takes it verbatim, yeah, like you must be telling the truth. And then at the end, he's like, I'm evil, right? He's like, see it coming. Like, just don't be naive, right? That's a lesson. Have some sort of Occam's razor in your head. Like, is this person telling me the truth? What other motivation could he have? The other one, the second lesson, if you have an issue that you maybe can solve it, tell other people. If you can't solve it yourself, just tell other people. Anakin keeps inside the fact that, Padme is going to die. He doesn't tell anybody this, not even Padme, right? He just keeps it to himself, and he goes to the dark side because it's something that people could have probably worked through with him, right? I don't know. He could have just said, hey, I understand your fears. We all have those fears, these visions I'm having. Like, it's just hallucinations, like, tell somebody you have a problem, get therapy.
And that goes for everything in life, everybody. That's not just a Star Wars thing. That's anything you're going through, reach out for help. And if it's in the science fiction world, you got plenty of people you can talk to. We'll help you out.
Don't talk to Chopper, but everyone else.
Yeah, not Chopper. Don't talk to Chopper. He'll tell you to jump. He'll tell you to throw a toaster in the tub. Don't talk to Chopper.
And confirming that this film is science fiction, I worked in critical care for 20 years. I saw a lot of people off to their final transition. I can promise you not a single one of those people died from sadness.
No.
Not one.
A broken heart. You mean a broken heart? Die from a broken heart.
Yeah, broken heart.
Their hearts were broken, but not in that way, no.
I was thinking she was stayed alive with hope, and then when she had no hope, she, you know what I mean? Like she was on that. I looked at it that way,
Well, speaking of looking, I just looked at the time. We've been going at this for 3/4 of an hour, and we're only just in the first trilogy.
We're getting into inflatable Falcon time limits.
Yeah,
that sounds about right. So, do you guys want to talk about the Ewok movies? Because if we're talking chronological, the Ewok movies, or would they come after Return of the Jedi?
I intentionally did not watch them, so I will opt out of the Ewok movies myself.
That would be a good that would be a good one to do around Life Day. Talk
Fair
about
enough.
Ewok movies.
The Ewok movies taught us that all of us kids that grew up in the 70s and 80s that were a little bit geeky were desperate for any content whatsoever featuring our favorite characters.
And it had blows.
I just had a conversation with somebody the other day. Does anybody remember the two TV movies from the 70s with Captain America, with the motorcycle and the clear
Red
shield
Brown.
and all that? We were talking about that, and those movies are terrible. Red Brown was the perfect actor to be casted, but the movies themselves are terrible. But it didn't matter because we didn't have all the content that we have today. So even then, we sat there and we made ourselves like it, no matter how bad they were.
We had Electric Company Spider-Man.
Yeah, there you go. That's a great example.
Spider-Man on a string.
So, with that in mind, let's jump to episode 4, A New Hope. What lessons? Because that's where it all began. We're not talking chronologically, but release dates. That's where it all began. What were some lessons you thought from that very first entry into the Star Wars galaxy?
Oh, I've got a lot.
All right, start us off, Drew.
I better let other people go first. I've got.
Well, give us one. And
all right, I got a whole list here. Okay, here's a good one. The most, in my humble opinion, and apparently in George Lucas's opinion as well, the most admirable and attractive women in the galaxy are the ones tough enough to save themselves. I absolutely love that. I love that about Princess Leia. And I know a lot of people have a problem with the Rey character in the sequel trilogy later, but they were just continuing what they did with Princess Leia. She wasn't the damsel in distress.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, she couldn't get the door unlocked to her own cell, but imagine if she could. She was never the damsel in distress. She didn't need to be saved. I think there's T-shirts out there that say "I don't need to be saved" with her picture over top. I love that about her, and it kind of taught me what I like about women in my personal life as well.
Nice.
I have a lesson.
All right,
This is
what do
one
you
that I teach. This is one that I teach the kids all the time. It said, in order to grow, you got to step out of your comfort zone. You got to do something different, right? Like Luke he's only ever known like dirt and dust, and he steps into a completely different world. I always wonder, do they have television where he's from? Does he at least know these things exist? Or is he just like, whoa? But really step into, get out of your comfort zone to do something bigger than what you're doing.
And I think it's impressive that not only do you bring it in the real world, but you as the parent bring it to the next generation, bring it to your own kids.
That's right.
How about you, Dexter?
That's a tough one. In terms of lessons, yeah, I mean, for me, obviously that's the movie that started it all. So when my mother took me to the Tilton Theater, which we once podcasted from in 1977. So yeah, I guess the lesson I got out of it was that it just opened the world and opened up a whole different world for me as a child. And I gravitated to that as like as a parent almost. Like I literally saw that movie probably 7 to 10 times in that theater.
And I think my kids have a pretty good balance of that kind of. Sorry.
Right. So, yeah. So I really gravitated to the parental part of it, I guess. If that makes any sense,
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
it really, it comforted me. It gave me, hope, I guess.
Nice. How about you, Mike?
Well, I was just talking about.
Hey, Mike, I got a little echo.
I got trying. Echo now.
No, still echo.
Test.
There you
There
go.
we go.
Good.
There we go.
Good.
I might have had too many windows open. I was trying to check our chat because the YouTube or the Facebook chat wasn't coming through. But no, I was raised by my grandparents, and that was the first show or movie I saw where the character didn't live with their parents, and it wasn't a big deal. I had seen tons of shows in the 70s, early 70s, but it was always like the after school, little Billy's getting abused by stepdad or something like that. And so it was nice that was just part of the story, and no one had to make a big deal about it. And I think that's what hooked me on Star Wars. So I don't know, that lesson just made me almost realize without realizing it that everyone's normal is slightly different. And I am envious of any of you that got to see it more than once, because if I were to ask my grandfather to see anything more than once, he would have said, "What does it change?" So
Empire was the only one I didn't see in theater. The only one.
Mike, is that why you made up for it by just dedicating your life to it? Is that how you make up for not seeing it more than once?
Possibly. Well, I mean, honestly, it was. I think what kind of drew me to Star Wars, because I always felt like an outcast, being raised by my grandparents, and we were like I'm not like I had a good life, so I'm not complaining. But my room was built from old wooden boxes, and my carpet in my room was one of those carpet books that my grandfather stapled to the floor. So I always felt like an outcast in some way, because I couldn't have anyone over to my house, and you know what I mean. It was, and so when I found this Star Wars community, especially I would say in the last 15, 20 years since the girls were little, we just made it our own thing. We just embraced it. My kids love it. I mean, my mother-in-law and my father-in-law, when they were still around, they came to events because I think they thought I was forcing my kids to do this stuff. And when they saw how much my kids loved it, like my father-in-law, who probably never stepped foot in a comic book, never read a comic book, he would come to Free Comic Book Day just to see the girls in costume. You know, he would come. He came to food drives. They would just come to watch my kids do their thing, and it all boils down to that: seeing Luke with his aunt and uncle back in '77. And here we are today.
Yeah, and speaking of the parental units, like Dex alluded to it, and Anthony saying you got to take that jump. So one thing, I think it's a life lesson actually for anyone. If your parental units, your parents or your aunt and uncle get set on fire and left outside your igloo hut house, then you should get out, like kind of like a horror movie when you hear "get out," like you need to roll. And I think Luke did the right thing. I think that that's something I've always worried about. Every time I come home, I'm looking outside, if there's anyone like any skeletal remains laying outside my house. So that's kind of even to this day, wherever I'm going somewhere, I'm looking outside first before I walk in to make sure there's no skeletal units. Anyway, very important thing there. And then other than that, one thing that's stuck with me, the ships in episode 4. I got you, Lucas. And in episode 4, ships are characters. I had just as much love for my Luke Skywalker, Harrison Ford, Chewbacca figures as I did for the X-Wing, the TIE Fighter, the original one that came out, and especially the Millennium Falcon. Ships are characters. And I think that's one of the things that was missed out for a while, especially with the new trilogy, like with episode 1, the shiny ship. Nobody knew what it was called. Nobody knew who that captain was. Like there was a miss there because ships are characters. And I like that since then, a lot of the Star Wars like the ships have become characters again. So that's one of the things that Star Wars kind of set that tone. And just like the Enterprise in the Star Trek world, I think we have to always understand that these are characters. And I like that Star Wars doesn't, blow up the Enterprise every 3 movies. So that's another thing that I definitely took from episode 1 or episode 4.
That's such a great point. Such a great point.
Well, with that in mind, one of the things that has also happened with the ships, not only have they taken roles as characters, they've also been those places of sanctuary. I know we're jumping. I'm jumping ahead, but when Han Solo says, we're home. When he returns to the Millennium Falcon, it's a place where friends and loved ones and team members go for shelter. They go for transportation. They go for rest. They go for recovery. They go to be together. And I think that's also a big lesson from many of the movies, not just a New Hope, but we're stronger when we are together. We're stronger when we join forces with like-minded individuals who are also creative and exciting. And you could even take that idea behind the scenes. I mean, George Lucas got this group of misfit rebels who, if you were to line up all these people and say that we're going to make a movie, you'd just say you're nuts. You got a machinist, you have a musician, you have this guy over here who likes to play with clay and puppets. How are you going to make a movie with this band of misfits? And George and crew, not only did they make a movie, but they've made many, many, many movies that we would all put on our lists of other movies that we love.
And I also, in that statement that Han Solo made when he walked into the Falcon, said, "We're home." He was talking to all of us.
Yeah.
That was to everybody.
Yep. He said that to the audience.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Did you want to share another one, Drew? You said you had a couple from A New Hope.
Actually, these might fit better in Empire. A couple of these now I'm looking at them.
Okay.
Well, I want to say something about episode 4.
Sorry about that.
About Aunt Beru and Uncle Owen when they were all burnt up. I remember my mom being shocked when she saw that.
Oh my God! Yeah.
As a little kid, I didn't really understand what was happening, but was I the only one confused on how they were like lit on fire at the time? Like they didn't introduce the flame trooper till what? till Book of Boba Fett or something like that, or
And
you know what I
clearly,
mean?
stormtroopers can't hit anything. We never saw them actually kill them on screen.
That is
So,
true.
Let's not
I,
pick
I
up.
never understood how they got all burnt up, though. It always confused me.
I
So.
think it was accidental. I think they were running from the stormtroopers and they tripped over something, and
It's electrical.
Watch,
electrical short from that
Yeah.
veggie thing she was using. You know.
just watch Troops. It tells you what happened.
Troop. Oh yeah, that's right, troops. That's
Oh my God!
it
That's
was
I
right.
a
remember
domestic
Troops.
dispute. It was a domestic dispute.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right.
Oh my
Well,
God!
this is unrelated, but we have to go off track a little bit. But I have the DVD copy of that came out in DVD magazine,
Wow.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
and
That's
That-
got to be almost 30 years ago,
that
right?
was,
Oh,
it
it's
was-
even older than that.
yeah, it was filmed about the same time they were filming Phantom Menace, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And because people were thinking they were filming the new Star Wars movie. If you listen to the guys who made it,
Right.
they were thinking, and Ken and I have run into that in the movie we were making where he was Clapper Boy.
Boom, boom.
Boom, boom. Oh, yeah, boom, boom.
One of the robots from Mystery Science Theater cameos in that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We didn't have any in ours. Our director we have to keep him focused, and it usually falls on me to do that.
That's great.
Wow.
So let's go to the next film in the sequence. The Empire Strikes Back. What do you got for us?
Mighty Drew.
Well, there's a lot of great lessons in Empire. Along the more serious side, Empire teaches us to let go of fear, to let go of doubt, and to keep your mind open to all kinds of possibilities, not just in your own life, but in other people. I think Empire teaches us all of those things, and I've tried to live my life that way. Try not to live in fear, try not to let doubt get me down, keep an open mind, and I've gotten to do a lot of cool shit in my life as a result, just from learning those 3 lessons. But on the more humorous side, the movie also teaches us that even knowing 6 million different forms of communication doesn't necessarily mean that people will listen to you.
Well, I think you missed one of the other important lessons from it was do or do not, that there is no try.
Oh, sure, there's that. I thought it'd be a little too obvious. I kind of steered clear of that one.
Well, I think you stepped right in it with yours. And all silliness aside, that is something that I've, earlier, Drew, you were talking about things that you teach your nursing students, and I've worked really hard to talk with that, whether it's a professional class or even our boys, this idea of either do something or don't, and if you don't do it, that's okay. Do it again until you are successful. This idea of do or do not can't be, and from where I sit in the life that I've tried to live, or that I've attempted to live, is to continue to practice, to continue to work at something, especially if it's something that from your perspective is meaningful, valuable, and worthwhile. And if at some point you decide it's not worthwhile, then do something else, because it comes down to the choices that you make. Even the choosing not to do something in and of itself is a choice.
Yes. That's a great point.
And even talking silly, can provide some wisdom tucked into those little words.
Absolutely.
I just want to stress again the lesson about patience. The same thing here. Yoda tells Luke, don't go off, don't go save your friends, don't stop your training. Luke listens to nothing. Trouble. Same lesson with Anakin. Same family, same problem.
Well, it's like poetry.
It rhymes. But it is. I mean, it is true, right? You want to be able to think through a problem and think through the consequences of something, because even though it did work out for Luke, but he did lose an arm. So there's that. He wasn't ready to face Darth Vader. But it could have easily also totally backfired and everybody dies.
Right.
It could have easily gone that way. The Skywalkers don't listen.
Well, in a way, Darth Vader ended up being one of Luke's greatest teachers because all the things that Yoda told him to do, or rather not to do, uh, Luke kind of screwed around and found out. That, I'm sure as his hand is tumbling off into the space in Cloud City, he's sitting there thinking, this is why the little green guy was saying the things that he was saying. So in a way, Darth Vader was one of Luke's teachers as well.
Gotta hand it to him.
No, no.
He was a good teacher.
A little green guy.
No.
My little green friend. Yeah.
What do you have for us, Persh?
Oh, Empire Strikes Back, the one thing, and to be all serious, I know I joke a lot, but don't trust people in capes. Like, seriously, like, whether it's Homelander or Lando Calrissian, like, don't trust somebody in a cape because you're just bad things are going to happen. So that's the one lesson learned, that Lando, I know he's a good guy now, but anyway, so that really bummed me out. I like Lando. I remember watching it. And then when that happened, I'm like, dude, you're his friend. And of course I'm looking at my best friend. I'm like,
I don't even know you anymore.
Immediately, like it's this joke, and so anyway, that's the one thing from Empire Strikes Back that I'll say don't trust a guy in a cape.
How about you, Dex?
Yeah, I think by the time, so you figure this is like the third movie from the first ones we've ever seen, or I'm sorry, second movie, right? Yeah, we're on.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean we've heard the line before of I got a bad feeling about this, and I think by this time, whenever you hear that line, something was bad or something bad was going to happen. So I think the lesson I took by this time when when Han says I got a bad feeling about this, you knew something was up. So that's what I think.
And for me, that's one line that I've incorporated into my weekly vocabulary.
All of us.
Or if I hear it, I'm like, who's making the Star Wars reference? I'm looking around the room to find out who I could be friends with all of a sudden.
Exactly.
How about you, Mike?
Well, I mean, Empire, what was different for Empire for me was it was the first movie that I looked forward to. Like Star Wars, I just kind of stumbled on, like as a kid, but Empire, like I looked forward to it. And it goes to the Yoda lessons. The like wars don't make one great is one that stuck with me. I don't know if it sent me down the slightly pacifist trend in my thought process, but it, because I grew up with my real dad being scarred from Vietnam. Because I feel like I was raised by the same people that raised George Lucas just 20 years later, because I was raised by my grandparents. And Empire was just it seemed like going to church for me. Like it was like going to church. And then same with Lando. I probably look like a little racist kid because I would not play with Lando toys. I held a hatred for Lando. Yet I was so angry as a kid at Lando. And again, I'm probably some psychiatrist can figure out that I was mad at something else from my childhood, but that hatred like burned in my, like, I didn't want to see Lando. I didn't want to hear about Lando.
He flew off in his buddy's ship with his girl, man. Come on.
All his clothes and
totally broke guy code.
He's even wearing his clothes.
Yeah.
Took his clothes, took his ride, took his girl.
Well, and I think Empire give us that a deeper look at all the stuff that we loved from the first one, like the Falcon. Like they spent so much time in the Falcon. Like it seemed like Chewie was more than just like the walking carpet in the first one, So it was, you just got to see so much, and you got to see them band together, and it just, But again, my hatred for Lando and it being the first one that I just really looked forward to, I just soaked it all in. Again, I could only go see it once because I still was, young enough that Grandpa had to pay for stuff. So.
Oh, you didn't have a secret back door you can sneak in at the old Frank's Theater? Like I had a whole system. I had a whole system
Oh,
getting
yeah.
in there.
Put the
Open
little
tonight,
brick-
we had to stand in line like everyone else. But after that, when you leave the exit, my foot's in the door. I
Come on,
got
Chris, remember you put the brick on the door, to hold it open,
I grew up in Amish country, man. You have to drive to get anywhere.
Oh yeah, yeah. Oh yeah. We were a bicycle. Yeah, we were actually, it was like Stand By Me in my neighborhood. We had railroad tracks. We had
I think the closest movie theater to where I lived was probably 20 miles. So
wow.
And they would have missed me if I was on my bike that long.
Well, let's go to the last one in that original trilogy then. Return of the Jedi. Who's got a lesson from that magic piece of work?
No one is beyond redemption.
Yep.
No one is beyond redemption. It is never too late. Somebody's going down a bad path, a dark path, or whatever. Even if it feels like their life, their fate is completely set on that path, it is never too late to turn things around. I think that's the biggest lesson that most people probably took from Jedi. I mean, Darth Vader was the biggest, baddest bad guy in anything out there, and in the end, he turned around, took a bunch of electricity to the face, and saved his son.
Yep.
Yeah.
Electricity to the face.
Yeah.
Good point.
I don't think I've ever heard it described that way.
Wow.
Well, so specifically. What about you, Anthony? What do you have for us from that movie?
Well, Andrew stole mine. So
Stole your thunder?
Thanks a lot. I mean, there's a lot of. I mean,
If you think about it in terms of this podcast, Ant, you're Han and I'm Lando. You kind of brought me in late. It's like, see, it's my buddy,
You're not going to double cross him, are you?
I mean,
who knows?
it's funny. There are
night is
two
young.
redemptions there. There are two redemptions. There's Lando. There's Anakin. Anakin Skywalker. How about sometimes surprising? I'm trying to make it up on the fly here, but the fact that the Ewoks should be such fierce warriors, like you can't judge a book by its cover.
Yep.
Right. Like there's these little cute little teddy bears that just go apeshit crazy if you attack their planet.
Yep.
So that was something.
I see you nodding over there, Persh.
Yeah, I the one thing from Return of the Jedi. So anyone in the military knows, especially if anyone like the Marine Corps, there's a saying, this is my rifle. There are many like it, but this one is mine. My rifle is my best friend. It is my life. I must master it. I must master my life. Listen, if you're a Jedi, you don't put your lightsaber in the R2 unit. You carry it with you when you walk into the Jabba palace. What were you thinking? You don't even have a gun, man. Like, anyway, yeah. So keep your weapon close to your side. It's one of the Jedi things. Don't lose this. I think Obi-Wan told Anakin, don't lose this again. And so anyway,
this is your life.
This is your life. This is your life. This is your weapon. This, whatever the creed is for the Jedi, hold on to that damn lightsaber. For crying out loud.
Why didn't he bring a lightsaber with him?
It was part of that crazy plan. And then I'm going to go out there and you're going to shoot it in the sky and I'm going to bounce off the sky. I don't know the whole plan. It's kind of, I don't get it. I don't understand.
We were a kinder audience back then.
Yeah. I mean, I bought into it. I was like, that's awesome. And then they had the R2 with the lightsaber that pops. Cool. All right. This is great. But
I thought he just wanted them all out in the open. It's
yeah, but I guess he
Did you
saw
see Inglourious Bastards? We don't fight in the basement,
That's right. Yeah. You don't fight in the basement. Don't get backed into a corner.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the one thing from Return of the Jedi. And then other than that, like you talked about the redemption thing and of course the value behind that, the father and the son, the love for a father for his son. That in Luke, although he felt the good in Darth Vader and all this stuff, but in the end, regardless of what Vader had done up to that point, there comes a time and there came a time, and I love how it was written, and I love that scene when Vader, regardless of everything that has happened and all the kids that he murdered in the Revenge of the Sith, which we can't forget that, everybody. Obi-Wan, you don't just let him walk away. But anyway, but the fact that, it finally came through, the love for a child, that to me is the strongest lesson learned from that.
Well, even I think just not even just love father to son, but just love period. If we go back to the last movie, Luke left his training in Dagobah because he loved his friends, that attachment that he had built with them. And I think, in a weird way, even though that movie came before the prequel trilogy, this idea of attachment isn't necessarily a bad thing. This love that we have for each other can be a force for good, and not necessarily only a force that leads to the dark side. And going back to this idea of judgment, we shouldn't judge the Ewoks. These space murder bears. We shouldn't judge
These murder bears.
The 800-year-old frog guy. This judgment that we sometimes carry with us can lead us astray. Folks have more in them than just their appearance. Folks have more powers than we're aware of, and sometimes, back to Anthony's point about patience, if we're patient enough, sometimes those strengths will show up and rescue us or help us in ways that we wouldn't have really been able to appreciate if we only looked at our judgments.
I want more of the snarky comic Ken. I want more of these comics because they're hilarious. Ken, just keep talking stream of consciousness.
I mean, the Ewoks had to eat, right? They had to eat, and there was something, on that spit that they were.
They were just collecting those empty helmets, man.
Oh, they were just collecting, yeah.
But they were cooking Han.
Yeah,
exactly.
They were cooking Han and Luke.
Literally.
Let's not forget that, everybody.
They didn't try to hide it. They didn't try to hide it.
They were on a spit
the whole time.
Yeah, that one Ewok that we talked about earlier that ended up dead in the field, and the other one's crying over him. Guess where he ended up too? Throw him on the fire.
Yeah.
They left that scene out for the kids.
The only bad thing about cooked Ewok is it's a little chewy.
Oh,
there he is. There he is, man.
How about you, Mike? What do you got for us for Return of the Jedi?
Ken is powerful. Ken is like evolving before.
Ken's on fire.
Well, the redemption thing was the big thing when I first saw it, but it also propelled my love of movie making, because it seemed like, if I remember correctly, they really put out a bunch of specials or something about how they did the speeder bike stuff around that time and stuff like that.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
I remember those.
That kind of like reinvigorated my love of movie making and stuff like that. And I liked, like, New Hope. I always liked the ending, the throne room scene. Like, I liked that music. It was always uplifting. And I liked the end of, because at the time we thought that was the last movie. So it felt like a triumphant end to what, we had all grown up with. Jedi is probably the one I've watched the least, which I know is, you're not allowed to say when you're my age, but it also came out when I started building cars. So it was a little bit of a trade-off. Because I lived in Lancaster County, I had to have a car, and if you don't have money for a car, you have to build one. So.
Why did they take out the Ewok celebration song at the end?
The Nuck Nuck song?
Yub Nub. Yeah.
I don't know.
You want me to sing it? I'll sing it for you right now, I swear.
He knows the words. Go ahead.
I know the words.
Well, do you know the words to Lopti Neck?
Gesundheit. I don't even know what that is.
Well, Zoe listens to some list on Spotify that's the in-universe music. Like all this in-universe music or something.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know what it's called, but she listens to like the songs from some of the what was that? Visions? That one where
yeah.
Well,
yeah.
In the movie making world, it's called diegetic music, and it's music that shows up in the movie as if it was in real life. So when we listen to the radio, or if you go back to George Lucas's second movie, American Graffiti, so they played the radio in the movie as part of the soundtrack, and that was kind of unusual. And he's done that, and the makers have continued to do that, where they have the jukebox in the corner, they have the Cantina band, so you're watching this almost like a documentary, stepping into this world, and they just happen to be playing music. And so going back to the Lapti Nek, that was the original song that they played in Jabba's palace. Cy Snoodles and Droopy McCool, back before Joe Yowza was a thing, back when they used to, sing jizz music.
Yeah.
The Yuzum, yeah, there was
The Yuzum, yep.
Yeah, the Yuzum.
Yep. That was the Yuzum was part of the special edition.
Correct.
But
Yeah.
Lapti Nek, and interestingly enough, if I don't know how many of you have started reading the From a Certain Point of View, Return of the Jedi book.
Yeah.
There's a story in that book about now I can't remember his name, the little guy that played the piano.
So Cy Snoodles?
No, Cy Snoodles was the one with the Mick Jagger lips.
Yeah, I don't know.
He was
I'm
also.
sorry, I can't let you keep going right now. Did you say jizz music?
That's what they call it. Yes.
Yes.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, and that's yes, in the Star Wars world, that's what it's called.
Was it Droopy McCool? Droopy McCool?
No, he was the guy who played the clarinet.
Okay.
And I can't believe he's known as Red Ball Jet.
Oh, Max Rebo.
Max Rebo,
Max
yes.
Rebo. Yeah.
Yes, he survived. Heather just yelled down from the top, Max Rebo.
Good for you, Heather. Good for you.
So there's a story about Max Rebo in this book, and it's called Fancy Man. And just so you're aware, I don't know how up on Huttese you are. Fancy Man is English for Lapti Nek in Huttese.
That's cool.
So
Wow.
I do like the music from the Xbox as well. The Xbox game
Solo when he's dancing.
that we use for our theme music for the Inflatable Falcon.
yes.
I just got back from the Galactic Star Cruiser, and
Oh yeah.
there's a Twilight girl who is, and it's like being on a cruise. We're sitting at dinner, and some Twilight girl comes out and is singing all these songs. She's not singing any cover songs from Earth or anything like that, but some of the stuff wasn't bad. And they had a girl. What's Greedo's species? Rhodian. Is that it?
Rhodians, yep.
Yeah. There was a Rhodian behind her, like playing this piano type instruments, like a mixture of piano and percussion and all that. So yeah, that was all like it was literally in universe music that we were listening to when we went to dinner both nights.
When is that closing down anyway? Isn't that this month?
End of the month.
Wow. At
It's
least
a
you got to
crime.
see it.
It's a crime.
Yeah.
I just that's another discussion for another time.
At least you got to see it.
It was a
that's
fun
cool.
experience, you're saying?
It was amazing. It was extraordinary. We sat there and you were living the Star Wars movie. You went to bed at night and you dreamed about real life and woke up in the fantasy all over again. Speaking of which, I grabbed one of these Galactic Star Cruiser hats, one for each of you guys here in the podcast.
Oh wow.
So for those of you who are further away, we'll have to get an address or something so I can get it.
Oh wait, can we see the front of it again?
Oh yeah, sure. Sorry.
Also, to describe it for the.
There we go.
Oh, there you go.
It's the Halcyon. Halcyon is the name of the
That's great.
Galactic Star Cruiser.
I think
Thanks. That's fantastic.
I love this hat.
Yeah, that's
Great
the
hat.
same ship that Han and Leia went on their honeymoon.
Yeah. And Lego Star Wars, the Lego Star Wars, what was it, summer special?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
I really hope they bring this back as a cruise. Disney has their cruise ships, but that right there, if you were to take one of these cruise ships and redesign it like you're on a starship, and that would be absolutely fantastic.
It was extraordinary. The illusion was complete. And I just cannot fathom that they are closing this down. I cannot conceive. We had so much fun. It was one of the most fun things I've ever done in my life. And I cannot conceive that they're not keeping it going.
Well, and everyone I know that's going on it has the same reaction.
Yeah.
Like, because I when it was before they announced it was closing, I didn't really think of going, but in the back of my mind, my wife was like, when you have enough money, you're going to go, right? As soon as they closed it, I was like, I was devastated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
well,
a shame.
it's like $150 per night per person. It's very expensive.
Hmm.
Yeah. Well, no, but it's like I figured it out. I think what the price tag hurt people, it hurt people like me because I'd be the one person paying for the family of four. But if
Yeah,
four
yeah,
friends went,
Yeah.
yeah.
it and you split it, it's not
Right.
out of the like if you go to Ocean City, Maryland for a week, you're going to drop a lot of money
Mhm.
or a
For
lot,
family, yeah.
you know.
I'm
But
in the
but
same. I'm in the same boat. Like we go to the movies, like I'm elated when my daughters say they don't want to join me because it's like $100 to go to the movies. You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
When they tell me, oh well, I don't want to see that movie. I'm like, yes, all right, great. I could save some money.
Well, when Force Awakens came out, I've said this before. I got my credit card bill and I was like, "Who spent $800?" And my wife's like, "You went to see that movie like 20 times."
Exactly. Exactly.
No, I didn't mean to derail the conversation there. We were talking about the music. It just made me think of the
No,
cruise.
that's great.
Yeah.
No, that's awesome.
I'm glad you
And
had a great time too.
so I'm embarrassed to say this out loud, and I can't believe that no one else on this show picked up on it. Considering that we're doing these in chronological order, we skipped two important movies.
Skip Rogue One and
We
Solo.
skipped
Yeah.
Rogue One and Solo, so let's do those two movies together, in an effort to save a little bit of time. What lessons do you think came from those two movies?
You have to be selfless. That's Rogue One. Selfless for the greater mission. Like sometimes there's a bigger purpose than you.
Perfect. Yeah.
Stormtrooper armor can be damaged by sticks.
And
I find that
sand.
offensive.
Don't forget the sand when he throws the sand in the face.
You can't tell Forrest Whitaker's character anything. He's not going to believe you no matter what you say. You've lost.
What are you talking about? I didn't have anything.
There is a good one in Rogue One, though. They say it over and over again. Rebellions are built on hope.
That's awesome.
Bring it back to my students. Another thing that I teach my students is I taught to them about nursing superpowers, and it's not just medical knowledge and everything, but courage, compassion, stamina, but optimism, hope. Optimism is a superpower, and I talk to them extensively about that. And I think that's a great lesson that comes out of Rogue One. Rebellions are built on hope. Everything is built on hope. If you got to have a good attitude in order to achieve your dreams.
There's a line in Rogue One that I use all the time for business, especially when things look like they're dire, is find a way to find a way. And it doesn't sound like it makes sense, like from a sentence structure point of view, but it actually makes so much sense, right? Like you have to find a way to find, and I think actually it was in the original trailer, and they took it out of the movie. But you have to find a way to find a way. It's such a great motivating line.
Yeah.
Well, that's
Never give up.
That's Lucas. That's how Lucas created everything that was created. He would just tell people, "I need this to happen."
Yeah.
And what
Make it happen.
they
Yeah.
had to make it happen or invent how to make it happen.
Right.
So
Yeah, in fact, that hope theme is so powerful. For those of you that have listened to the show since we started, I mean, we're now in our 36th episode, but Anthony and Demetrius and I early on did an entire episode on that theme of hope and the many times and the many ways that it's shown up. And that's as we've said, it transcends the screen. It's something that's live and personal each and every day. And if you think you're gonna fail, you're gonna fail. If you think that there's the possibility, then you have a much better chance of success happening. Like Anthony was saying, find a way to find a way. I mean, we'll
I
cobble
like
these
that.
things together. I mean, Mike brought it up too. They had to make the cameras to film these movies that they wanted to make. They had to make the computer to do that motion tracking. They had to make these spaceships out of 65 different model kits with bubble gum and rub and buff. And now we've got folks who make their careers out of either making movies or making props or whatever. And that hope has affected us in ways that are probably hard to measure, but we can absolutely positively feel it and appreciate it. That's for sure.
Definitely.
And then the other thing, of course, from Rogue One is, which kind of, Star Wars, the Force is kind of like its own religion, and I'd be okay with that. The Force is with me, or I'm one with the Force, and the Force is with me. Is that the saying?
Yep.
That's exactly it. Yep.
So
You
that
just have to repeat it like 952
and you
times.
repeat it a bunch of times, and but it's one of the things that the teaching behind the Force, that is definitely one of the things that that we all want to. Hell, I believe that, like, the Force binds us, ties us all together, nature, animals, people, and in that movie, that one line that was said probably 20,000 times in that movie, but it's sunk in. So I think that's one of the things, for sure, for me, what Rogue One, lessons learned. And then Solo, don't trust anyone.
Especially when they tell you not to trust them.
You don't trust, and it's like, but if somebody says don't trust anyone, don't trust them.
Right.
Don't trust the person that says don't trust anyone.
Only a Sith deals in absolutes.
That's true too.
Just like it's like the previous movie. It's like we were talking about the previous movie. It was right there the whole time. Don't trust anyone. I'm someone. I'm one of those people.
That's right.
Well, the one thing I got from kind of both of those is Rogue One. We had when Rogue One came out, I think we did a live podcast with Zoe, so we had this discussion like right after it was fresh, like at a diner. But the one thing that I talked to my girls about and stuff was that all of those people that helped get the plans to Princess Leia, they didn't get medals a week later.
Right.
And I think sometimes in real life we forget, like, whether it's first responders, whether it's people in the military, whether it's whatever, the people getting medals, not that they don't deserve it, but we tend to just push aside, or just because things happen, the people that did the ultimate sacrifice. And we saw that even in Solo, when all those people with the heist that put Solo on his path, his whole group got blown up. And then the other lesson I learned was I was worried about Solo when I heard Woody Harrelson was in it. And because I always liked Star Wars because it didn't really have main like people you knew outside of other movies.
Yeah. And
it didn't bother me one bit.
He was great.
He was a good character.
Yeah. And
I love that movie. I've seen it many times.
Yeah.
And the guy who played Han, that was my other worry. I was like, am I going to be able to? And I was fine with that too, because
I think Solo gets a bad rap. I really do.
Yeah.
I still blame Movie Pass. Remember Movie Pass?
Yeah.
So Movie Pass back then, right after Force Awakens came out, you could pay like $7 or something a month, or 10.
Oh, maybe. Right. Yeah.
As many times as you wanted. Solo was the first movie that they changed it, and you could only see it limited times.
That's right. Yeah.
And so, because it hurt how many times we went, because after spending all that money on them, we went in Movie Pass. We were going, like, we went and saw, I forget, one of them, I think might have even been Rogue One or something. We saw Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday on Movie Pass, and we only paid $6 for the month. Just in a week, we saw it 4 times. Where then when Solo came out, I was like, I can't go back to paying for every time I go to see a movie.
Right.
So,
well, just so you guys are aware, we do have a listener, a viewer.
Oh, John.
And John's checking in.
Yes.
Saying they're sorry he can't join us and hope we're having a fantastic show. And considering that we're 90 minutes in and we still haven't made it all the way through, I think we're doing we're having quite the fantastic show.
Another person we would have never met except for Star Wars.
True. Star Wars brought all of us here, as we,
Yeah. Meeting strange men in the toy department, and I met John on TikTok. It's the two exact things you tell your kids not to do.
Yeah.
Me and Ken did a panel in Philly, and that's what we started out. Look, kids, don't treat people this way.
Yeah, it sounds like strange code language. Meeting strange men in the toy department.
Yeah.
When you're on a date with your wife, yes.
Well, I assume you're in the Star Wars department, like the Star Wars toys, or
What do you? You've told them the story, right, Anthony?
Yeah, we've said that story before. It was, I think we were looking at, when was it, 2019?
Yeah.
Right before COVID. And I think we were looking at just toys that had come out for what it had to be Rise of Skywalker, right? Well, something. I don't remember what it was. But we were looking at Star Wars aisle, and it's rare to see other adult people looking at toys, especially the Star Wars aisle.
Without children with them. Like
Yeah,
we,
and I think you were talking to Heather about stuff, and I just kind of joined in, like I always join in with strangers. And
yeah, and at the time I was wearing my my Forces for Change bracelet that I got from Star Wars Celebration, and you said that you had the same bracelet.
Look, it's right here.
There it is.
I
It's
wore
right
that.
here. I actually
thing-
wear it all the time. It's right here. This thing is what? This is like 8-10 years old at this point.
Yeah, I wore that thing every day for years until it finally broke, and
Yeah, that's what I'm scared about. But
Yeah.
I wear it all the time. It's pretty well made.
And I actually had a backup one in my collection, so I still have one, and I still have the broken one. I just can't wear it anymore. But yeah, that's how we met. We met in the toy aisle. You know, you were with your wife, and I was with my wife, and next thing you know, 36 episodes into a podcast.
Yeah, and I think COVID helped too, right? Because I think we were like, what are we going to do this whole time without society?
Right.
So we got to put this together. Yeah, this is so much fun. And actually, this new format with the new with Restream, this is much better than before.
Yeah, I agree.
Much better than before.
And so that brings, speaking, considering that we're talking about how we met in that era, let's get into the Disney era and talk about the sequel trilogy.
Oh, can I segue?
Yeah,
Because
sure.
It's the thing that I really appreciate about Force Awakens is friendship. I love Finn. He's one of my favorite all-time characters. I love the way he's acting, but he is loyal. He is a friend. You could always trust him. And the way he and Ray are friends, it's just I really love that relationship, I actually wanted to go a little more than friends, but that being loyal and having to your friends is something that is it's a theme throughout Star Wars, right? I mean, you see what happens when it goes wrong with Anakin and Ben, but Luke, Han, and Leia, they're friends to the end, right? Well, technically two of them are related, but the friendship theme really plays itself very well in Force Awakens.
I was always a little disappointed that we didn't get more of the backstory on Finn. Like, why was he the one? I mean, how many stormtroopers are there?
I read the book, yeah.
Oh, they cover it in the book?
Yeah, they had a whole book about it, but they should have had it in the movie, right? And,
What was it in the novelization of Force Awakens?
Yeah, it was in the kid novelizations. It was one of those.
All right.
And it had like some of the backstories before the movie.
Yeah, I think I actually have this book somewhere. Yeah, they were like, they talked about how Ray learned how to fly, and they give you like a little backstory on every character.
Yeah, they were the lead ups to the movie.
Yeah.
And I think that what's sad about that, and look, Disney's made some great Star Wars, and some people think Rogue One the best Star Wars, right? And Ahsoka, oh my God, Ahsoka's good. But I think when they brought it back, they just didn't know what they were doing at first, right? And we always say, well, they should have done this and they should have done that, and I'm about to say it. But somewhere at Disney, some people were actually thinking this stuff through, because there was a backstory to Finn. There were these backstories that they never showed you, but clearly someone wrote it because they released the book, right? And the book came out before the movie. So it would have been nice if they just kind of remember we talked about our lessons earlier today. Patience, think things through. If they would have done those things, I think we would have had a better result with the sequel trilogy.
And they did Finn wrong, I think, because if you remember all like the promos, like the posters and everything, like Finn was prominently on the poster.
He was all over it. Yep.
Yeah, holding the lightsaber of all things, So yeah, I think they did Finn wrong.
And they changed his character because he was supposed to be a much more important character.
Exactly, right.
And I think they're going to try to like undo that with the next film with Rey and Finn.
Mm.
I'm pretty sure they are gonna now kind of put him back. But in the last Jedi, not the last Jedi, the Rise of Skywalker, when he meets the other stormtroopers, that whole thing was just I don't want to trash talk it, but there was so much more story there.
Yeah.
Like, and it's such one simple line that she could have said, like, yeah, when we heard about you, we did it too. Like we didn't want to do this either. And I don't know why they just rushed through it just to get it done, and it makes me sad. But I guess in hindsight, you could overlook it, but it would have been so cool to have seen it on the screen.
Yeah.
For me, one of the things that jump out of all three of them is that our vision of something isn't necessarily complete reality. And what I mean by that is, so for the first six, we kind of had been led to believe in some ways that the Jedi were the good guys. And in many ways they were, and they were not perfect. And so I think that came out in the sequel trilogy, because you look at, you mentioned Finn. He starts off in stormtrooper armor. So are you looking at him as the bad guy? And in fact, he became a hero. So it's not just what you see. You got to look beyond that, at their actions, at their character, and so on. It's not just about the appearance or about the title, but about what they say and do.
See, that's what I love about Finn. It's yet another redemption story in Star Wars.
Yep.
And I'm fascinated by redemption stories in any medium. And I think there was a lot of missed opportunity to develop the character, and showing his redemption and how he ended up where he was, and well, we did get to see how he ultimately redeemed himself.
But I think Finn isn't even a redemption story. He never went. He decided never to have to be redeemed. He's like, I'm not doing this. I'm not even going to fire this gun.
Right. The thing that I love about the sequel trilogy, and I've had this talk with Anthony before, I think Force Awakens, I'll say it, I think it's a perfect movie. I love it.
Mhm.
The other two, not so much, and there's a lot that's easy to trash about them. However, I will always cherish all three of those movies because of my memory of those movies. Like, we all talk about in the 70s and 80s going to see these movies in the theater and whatnot. When each one of the sequel trilogy came out, and Anthony and I are pretty much neighbors, we live in the same town. Everybody that we knew from town showed up at the movie theater with their kids at the same time. And it was like a giant gathering of just everybody that we kind of knew either well or peripherally some way. It's like, oh, we, his kids are on my kid's soccer team, this and that and the other thing. And it was just a wonderful community atmosphere when all three of these movies came out. So, even though the second of the Last Jedi left some things to be desired, I'll never have a bad memory of that movie because I remember how we felt before it came out. Yeah, the 501st were there. Mike, Lord knows you were probably one of them. And just how we all like milled around the theater afterwards, talking about what we liked, what we didn't like. It was a great moment. It was a great moment for all three of them.
For me, to that point, Drew, that was the first set of movies that I went to see with my family. So Heather and the boys, we
Mm-hmm.
got tickets on opening night, and then for the Last Jedi, I started doing this. Maybe with the Last Jedi, um, getting two sets of tickets. One set for the family, we'd all go watch it together. They would leave and go home, and I would watch it again right afterwards to catch the things I may have missed from that first showing. So beyond the lessons on the screen, for me, all of those movies will have that special family connection, even to the point where, I've told this story a couple times, and I will probably tell it forever. When we left the theater for The Force Awakens, we went to the first showing And as we're leaving, our oldest kid is in the lobby with everybody around, says, "Oh, I can't believe they killed Han Solo."
Oh, man.
And so we had to like
Oh,
tuck him under a jacket and get him out of the theater.
No, I think I was with you. Wasn't I with you? Like that. Somebody did that at the
I think we were around. We didn't know each. I mean,
I think we were both there, but we didn't know each other back then.
Yeah, we weren't hanging out at that time. But yeah, I think we may have been in the in the path of each other. But yeah, that's
maybe Anthony was one of the guys like, get him, get him.
It's unbelievable that people like that exist. It's like why I just
Yeah.
I saw a guy throwing, like when I was driving from Connecticut today, just throwing their McDonald's bag out the window, and it's like the same guy, right? Like why do people do this stuff?
Yeah,
Who are these people? I hate these people.
yeah.
I know we're going a little long here, but I wanted to tell a story real quick because my son. So, what year did Force Awakens come out? What year was that?
2015.
2015. Okay, so Drew Jr. he was 7 at the time when this movie came out, and he was so excited, and we went and saw it that night, and he fell asleep during the movie in the theater. He had all his friends around him, but he passed out. So when we woke him up to leave, he was so upset and so annoyed that he fell asleep during the movie. Why didn't you wake me up? You can't wake him up. Nothing will wake him up. So I went real quick and I got tickets for the first showing the next morning, I think at 11 a.m. He was off from school for some reason, and he loves to tell the story. I said, come on, we got to go. He says, well, where are we going? I said, you got to go to the dentist. I said, I'm worried about a couple of those teeth. You got to get a couple of those teeth pulled. And like really wound up the anxiety. But when we pulled up to the theater, oh, he was so excited. It was great.
Yeah, and for me, the lesson from the Force Awakens. So, lessons learned: if the love of your life dies tragically with a lightsaber through your chest, obviously not the stomach, then immediately you hug a stranger you just met and not your husband's best friend. So that's the lesson learned. And I know that JJ wishes he could take that back. But that was the one thing that watching The Force Awakens, when the Falcon came back, Han had died. Leia knows he died because she felt it. And then Leia runs over and hugs Rey. And I watched Chewbacca walk by, heading towards a bunch of damn strangers. And I sat there and I went, can we curse on this? Anyway, what WTF? I was like,
the Force.
Look, she didn't give him a medal either.
I'm like,
Yeah, she had a problem with him from the beginning. He clogged the showers.
Oh, but Chewie, man, I was heartbroken, man.
He eventually we're talking about redemption. He got his medal.
He got his medal.
It was an afterthought.
That's right. And if that movie was made, if the original Star Wars movie was made today, everyone would get a medal.
It's true.
I
Hey
mean,
Ken, is there some like behind the scenes story of like Carrie Fisher just not liking the Wookiee outfit? She's like, I'm just not going to film a scene with her.
well, I mean,
that we're missing.
well, maybe, but I think if we stay in universe, it could be that she's upset because Chewbacca saw Han naked before she did. I mean, they showered together first.
Yeah, that's
So,
true.
I mean, maybe she just carried this little bit of resentment or something like that.
Maybe Wookiees just aren't huggers. Like maybe it was a cultural thing. Like maybe if you hug a Wookiee, that's like Wookiees had all those weird customs, like they couldn't use their claws.
Or how about he just doesn't wear pants?
Yeah,
Oh, why'd you go there?
Yeah.
Good Lord.
Maybe that's why she's avoiding the hug,
Never excited Wookiee. Wasn't that one of those lines?
I was in the same boat as Drew when it comes to that was the first live action Star Wars I got to see with my daughters that was new for all of us. And Zoe she had started her podcast before that, so we had all that going on. Like we were just it was just like it was all the stuff that my kids got made fun of for, because my kids got made fun of for liking Star Wars. They were kids, even by teachers. Teachers would be like, "Oh, really? They like Star Wars?"
That tone was perfect.
Well, and I used to have Star Wars posters in my classroom all the time, and I was just considered like that weird. Like my boss knew I dressed in stormtrooper armor. It was almost like a joke at meetings. Like, oh yeah, there's something wrong with him. until all of this came out. Then they were like, "Hey, can you bring the 501st to the school? Hey, can you know what I mean?" Like, because they went to a premiere and saw all these stormtroopers, like, oh, because they so it was kind of that what you were saying with the community. Like we went and trooped all those movies. Like we got to see The Force Awakens a day early before everyone else because the theater said, "Look, if you're going to do these troops for us, we'll let you see the theater in the theater," and it was really cool. And I lucked out like the week The Force Awakens came out, and then I think the new Battlefront came out.
Mm-hmm.
So I was up to like 2 a.m. with the Battlefront because we all just went to our local GameStop in Armor, and we took an R2 unit with us to pick up my Battlefront. It wasn't anything official. We just did it just to mess with the people working, and that turned into like a 2-hour ordeal with pictures and all this stuff. So we were up late then. I had to go in and teach. And then that Tuesday, Zoe got invited to Freedom Tower or whatever, what's the where the World Trade Center is,
World Trade Center 1.
Whatever that building is there was Wired magazine was having a Star Wars party. And Zoe got invited to that. Well, she was only 15. So me and my friend Marty took the tickets and we went and hung out at the Star Wars party by Stance Socks till like 5 in the morning or 3 in the morning. I got home at 5 and went to work at 6. So, and then we had all the movie premieres. So it was just like a whirlwind of fun Star Wars stuff.
Yeah, it's great.
It's a good time.
One of the lessons that I took specifically from The Last Jedi was no matter how much planning you put into something, even as powerful as hope can be, there is no guarantee that it's going to go the way that you want it to go. And you have to be open to that reality. And so even with best laid plans and as much as thought you've put into it and predicted the future or whatever, it may not go that way.
Yeah.
And no OSHA. They didn't have any OSHA when they were building Star Killer Base. They should have had a handrail on that bridge.
Force Awakens showed us how high something can climb, and then I believe The Last Jedi just showed us that means that they have just that much farther to fall. Yeah.
And I'm hoping
Let's not end on that note. That's depressing.
Yeah. No. Well, with the Last Jedi, if we're moving to that, the one thing is it's been proven if you know Star Wars, you can make Star Wars. I think that you hire a director just because they've done some great work, but if they don't get it, if they don't understand it, you're gonna piss off the audience. And I think that's one of the things. And in fact, I mean, look what happened with the last movie of that trilogy. It was making up and changing, trying to retro. So we ended up getting a whole, which is why the third one, isn't as well regarded as The Force Awakens, because it basically retro fit the whole Last Jedi mess. So that's the one thing. He's a great director. Rian Johnson. I just saw Glass Onion, freaking phenomenal. But it's one of the things to subvert expectations. It works great in movies and all these different genres. But when you have a fan base with lore and legend, you got to be real careful with that. And one of the biggest lesson for me with that entire new trilogy, and Dex and I talk about all the time, if our heroes are still around, don't kill off our heroes. Or don't just replace the heroes, because they're still around. They can still be heroic. They don't have to be the leads, but don't change what made them the heroes that we grew up with. So, and that goes for any franchise.
And I went the other direction with that one. I looked at Luke, because my friend Marty and I have this argument all the time. I looked at Luke, and because I loved Empire so much, I looked at Luke's destiny was kind of set when he went into the cave with his weapons.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked at Luke, and it's just we look at movies differently. I looked at where Luke was as he was almost paying penance for that his rashness of taking weapons into the cave in Dagobah. You know, and so his life was kind of scarred by that impulsiveness, and that's what got him to where he was at. That's, you know. And then I also made a meme about Kylo getting his hair combed by his mom, and that's why he burnt down the temple too. You know, on any of my social media.
Was that the one with John?
With John, yeah, getting his hair.
Yeah.
That's for you, John.
One of the other lessons I've taken away from the sequel trilogy is that theoretically, potentially, Star Wars never has to have an end. They can continue to fit stories into the middle of these pieces. They can extend out into the future. They can go backwards in the past, and it can still be in this galaxy, or now, you know, in these galaxies, with some of the themes that we've been talking about: hope, patience, redemption, choices. All of these lessons that we've been, you know, learning and relearning since the late 70s, that we carry with us, that we share with our families, and we even go so far as to attempt to teach our colleagues or the friends that we make in line, whether it's at a movie premiere or at a convention or a troupe or in the aisle of Target. That Star Wars can bring people together. It's like the Force. It binds us. It surrounds us. It holds the galaxy together. And I feel blessed that this stuff exists. And even more importantly, I feel blessed because it has allowed us to do what we're doing tonight, and getting together, having, you know, 2 hours of fun talking about this made up galaxy with puppets and muppets and lasers and swords and spaceships and music. It's glorious.
Made up.
Well
I
said.
concur.
So normally we end our show with thanking the makers, but I think this whole entire episode has been a thank fest, thanking all of the different people, whether we're talking about George Lucas or John Williams or each other. So I just want to say thank you guys for being on this show each and every episode. Thank you for putting in your time and being open to having this much fun publicly on Facebook and YouTube for the world to see.
And thank you too, Ken.
Yeah, thank you, Ken. Thank you, guys.
Ken?
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Ken. That's very well said.
And we will catch up with all of you soon. May the Force be with you.
Before you end, you have to put the music on.
I don't think I have outro music.
Oh, just use the beginning one, so you have your bumpers already set.
Fair enough. I'm going to follow
Do it.
I'm going to follow the master and end us with, as he said, we'll end with our intro, and then we'll stop the live feed. So thank you everyone for watching, and here we go.
When I did Star Wars, I consciously set about to recreate myths and the classic mythological motifs.
The Force is the core of Star Wars, and you have to be careful when you answer too many questions about it.
And concept design, I think, is so critical. I mean, it's something that perhaps is underappreciated because it sets the template, it sets the aspirational goal for what the movie should be.